Okay. Hello and welcome, drop bears and hoof snakes, to our first episode of the Worldbuilders Compendium. My name is Botanical, and of course, we are streaming through the lovely and wonderful Dungeons and Dragons Australia. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited to let you guys sort of wander through my mind and how I build a campaign. Now, the idea behind this stream is essentially, how does a new DM, or even an experienced one, go about putting a world together, and from there putting the stories together and winding everything together, so that way, no matter what silly choices your players make, you're always prepared. For me, I'm a visual learner, so I like to start with maps. And so that's what we'll be doing today, is literally building the world from scratch. As we go on, we'll start talking about good ways to keep track of your campaigns. For myself, I use World Anvil and OneNote, but there are heaps of other cool ways of doing stuff that are both free and paid, and we'll explore those as we go along. So without further ado, we'll start talking about maps and map making programs. So that being said, there are many ways to go about this, and it can seem a little bit overwhelming at first. But as we're dealing with an overland map, actually planning out the world, the way I see it, you've got three options here. The first being Incarnate, which we have open on the screen. I used to subscribe, and indeed you do get more access to more symbols and stuff to add to your maps. However, I have since pivoted away and have moved on to a different program, which I'll be exploring with you guys shortly. So the cool thing about the free version of Incarnate is that it actually works really well with the tablet. In fact, I'd argue it works best if you have a drawing tablet of some kind. I feel that it's a little bit clunky when you're using the mouse. So if you don't have a tablet, you can still do it, but it's not quite as easy to go about things. So in this instance, it's given me a land-based screen. So if you're wanting to make islands, you'd need to subtract from that layer. Or in this case, is it maybe an add? Okay, so it's going to want to add. And so with the mouse, you don't have quite as much access to what you're kind of wanting to do. Whereas if I use my little pen, I can sort of draw a little bit happier on the screen. So, I mean, does it make a beautiful map? It most certainly does. But I feel that the amount of choices that you have for the free version is a little bit limited. But that being said, we're all different, and if you've got a tight budget, Incarnate is absolutely incredible. The second option that you would have is your photo editing software. So for me, I absolutely love Rebel. I picked it up on Humble Bundle for $30, and I absolutely love it. It mimics watercolor and acrylic paints, but it does the exact same job as what Photoshop or GIMP would do. So in this case, you're literally drawing your maps by hand onto the screen. So it can be another pretty easy way to get a map out onto paper. For me, now, there are plenty of other map building software out there, depending on what you want to do. But when it comes to Overland, those are the three main options. For me, building an Overland map, Campaign Cartographer 3 is absolutely incredible. You don't need a tablet. It's all clicking with the mouse. It can be a bit of a difficult program to to use, but if you jump on YouTube and have a look at the Profantasy YouTube channel, the developers actually do weekly live mapping sessions and they go through all the settings. So I've learnt most of the stuff from there. It is quite expensive, but in about August for the last 4 years, they've popped it up on Humble Bundle for really cheap, $30. So if you can get your hands on it, definitely do so. But everything that I'm about to go through in terms of how I go about building a world, you can do it in whatever program that you'd like to use. Maybe I haven't mentioned a program that you prefer. Doesn't really matter. It's all about how you put the continents and stuff together. It's very much a case of pick whatever program meets your budget and whatever one you're the most comfortable with. So here I have already created a blank map, but it's pretty simple. We'll say no for now. We're going to go overland maps, and obviously I've got quite a few different styles. Spectrum overland is quite pretty. Again, kind of subjective, I suppose. But my favorite for overland is 13th Age Revisited. And there's also metric as well as imperial as far as measurements go. Now, I'm actually going to do metric because you'll see that we'll actually be able to measure the distances between things. And being Australian, I have an easier time grasping meters and kilometers than I do inches and miles. So the width, that's 1,000 meters by 800 meters. Let's go 5,000 by 1,000. Yes, we need to also give it a map title. Finish. For now, we're just going to, you can see I've made a few maps. For now, we're just going to call it DDA until we can come up with a better world. Now, we can see here that we've made a very long, thin rectangle. That's totally fine. We didn't math correctly. What we can do is we can change the drawing area. So maybe let's make that 3,000. That's fine. It'll catch up. Excellent. Now, we don't need this border. Lovely. So, we've got ourselves a bit of a better sized map. What I like to do to start is I'm going to go over here into the layers and I'm going to make a new layer called Sketch. And we're going to spell it correctly, hopefully. I'm going to move that all the way down to the bottom. I'm sure there's a better way of doing it. I haven't worked it out yet. Excellent. So we're going to start with a sketch because we kind of want to make sure that we don't lump everything together and have a bit of a cluttered world. And it just means that we've got something to work with once we start filling things in properly. So in this instance, I'm going to come over to the tools over here and I'm going to choose Fractal Poly because that way it sort of makes a little thing like this. So we can sort of chuck down a continent like so. So before we do that, we're going to have a think about how many continents we're going to want, whether we're going to want a group of islands, just sort of have a think about how exactly we want this world to look. Do we want to have the entire world out on this map, or do we want to sort of have some parts that are cut off, maybe unexplored, or not going to be available to your adventurers? I prefer a more zoomed out sort of world view with all the continents. And I usually will also be a little bit cheeky and say, oh no, this is the known world. So if you want to add an extra continent in there a little bit later, there's no reason why you cannot. It is your world after all. And given the tech level that is in a classic D&D world, it's not unreasonable to think that there would be continents that are undiscovered. So I think maybe 3 continents could be, 3 main land masses could be a good point for us to work on. And then we can fill in some islands as we go. So, part of the world lives in the clouds. That's actually a really cool idea. I don't know how you'd put that in on a map proper, but maybe it was like a little appendix. Maybe we can add that in for our world. So we are building something from scratch. I like that idea. Okay, so we're going to do 3 continents to start with, and we'll work out how we're going to want to put any islands in if that's what we want to do. So the cool thing about the fractal drawing tool is that we can sort of click around and build some cool land masses. Now, of course, like I say, we can definitely hand draw this in something. But I feel like this is definitely the quicker and prettier way to go about it. I'm going to come down a little point. Now, the other thing to consider is that the smaller gaps that I put between each section, the more rugged the edge is. So you can see if I stretch it out, it sort of becomes a little bit more blocky, whereas if I keep it nice and small, we've got those beautiful fractal edges, that unevenness. Okay, just about done. We've got ourselves a basic landmass. All right, so maybe it's a little bit too not centralized enough, or we want to move it. Great thing is that we can move, scale, and rotate with this here cheeky tool. I'm going to select it. I'm going to press D for do it, which I'm not going to lie is a little bit counterintuitive, but you do get used to the program, I promise, and especially if you watch a few of the Profantasy videos, it does become a little bit more intuitive. We are going to move from there, and then we can just sort of move it down to here. Click reload, and we've got ourselves a basic landmass. Let's add in our second continent. We could. I'm trying to think. Should we do like a polar, like an ice cap or something like that? Because the other thing we should be considering is perhaps drawing out an equator. Again, it depends on how in depth you wanna get. But if the equator's about there, then all this section in here we could argue is tropical and/or desert. So then, if we were going to have like a tundra sort of area, we could put that more up here. Now, perhaps that is unexplored. Perhaps we don't need to have the entirety of the landmass in view if we were going to do a polar section. So we'll start up here. And sort of bring it down. Again, we can resize and move things around if it seems a bit awkward. Excellent. Right click to finish it off, and we've got ourselves our polar zone. We can maybe name it something cool. And maybe we can have another third large continent over this side of the map, and we can think about some islands. Click that out. Again, we don't need to be too thorough because this is the sketch layer. We can be as loosey-goosey as we want. We just want to sort of get some basic shapes to see what it is that it looks like. Okay, so we've got our three land masses. I feel as though this fellow here, the first one we drew, could possibly be a little bit bigger and also potentially just move it a little bit so we can stick it to there. And then we've sort of got this area here, which could be sort of the more tundra kind of area that leads up into this, well, for lack of a better term at the moment, Arctic zone. Similar over this side. And then as we come down through the equator, we have our different biomes. We could perhaps do some islands through here, sort of creating some seas, if you will, between the two areas. But for now, as far as a sketch layer goes, I think we're pretty happy. So what I'm going to do from here is fix up the water layer, because it looks a bit, well, bitmappy. Let's be honest. It looks a little bit like it's just very repetitive. So let's make that look a little bit nicer for when we put our our land masses down. So we're going to come over to the last box up here where it says FS Solid. We're going to go to bitmap styles. I am going to open up the sticky note, so that way I can just get to the file nice and quickly. Excellent. And this is a good thing, so you don't have to download all of the different expansion packs for Campaign Cartographer. You can have your own backgrounds ready to go. So you can just literally get the basic program and then put whatever bitmaps you would prefer into the program this way. So as we can see, we've got a few different things we can do. I'm going to go C light, C dark, high quality. And the reason I've reloaded it is because the moment that I start playing around with this, it tends to go a bit blurry. So we can sort of see what happens when we change those settings. Okay. It's changed the desert. That's fine. We've got to double check. So we're doing C dark. Come back over here. C dark. Get rid of that. And you can see that the background has become a little bit different. So we can play around with that until we get to a section that we're happy. And that, like I say, does mean that we can, for example, come over to Rebel. We can get some watercolors happening. All right, that's a nice watercolor. Here we go. Let's turn that water all the way up. And we can just, we're just going to be real random here, just to get the point across, you know. And let's get you. Because I am impatient and can't be bothered dealing with waiting for the paint to drip. All right, cool. There we go. Something basic. We can save that as Rebel artwork. Yep, that's fine. Just going to move my phone out of the way so I can see the save button. And then we can come over here. Remember where we saved it. That's usually pretty helpful. I do this all the time. I forget what I've done with my save files. If there's one thing that I should improve upon, it is being consistent where we save things. Rebel artwork, beautiful. And then we can chuck that down and it will scale it if we want to do it like that. We can turn off the scaling. So yeah, you don't need to have all of the different DLC to be able to utilize this program. You can definitely make your own assets, and the same applies to any symbols that you add to the map. But in this instance, we are going to utilize the stuff from the 13th Age Revisited, which is from this year's annual collection. Annuals are usually about $20 Australian a year, and you get 12 DLC packs, which I think is actually not too bad of a deal. I'm in the symbols section. We need to get to the bitmaps. Bitmaps, tiles, overland, to here again. Beautiful. I will keep it tiled to fit for now. So we've got our background there. So when it comes to filling in the land mass itself, this program's actually quite smart. It's going to know that you're putting down land. So what we're going to do is start with just basic land, because we can fill in the details a little bit later once we've got a little bit of a better idea what we want. So I'm going to go land default. And I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit on this section here, so that way I've got a little bit more control over the fractals and what we're wanting. So I do like this shape, but I kind of want a few more bays and seas potentially. And I feel like I do like to kind of keep things in the realm of realism rather than sort of going, oh, well, it's magic, so things can be as crazy as they want. I think it's maybe a little bit lumpy. We might just sort of smooth out that edge a little bit more. But as far as a basic shape and how much space we want to take up on the map goes, I think this is a very good starting point. So what we can do now is go over to the sketch layer, and we're going to add a sheet effect. And this is why I love Campaign Cartographer 3 Plus, is you can start adding these little bits and pieces that can just like make your maps really pop, make them become super realistic, or they can it makes them how you can sort of picture maps in your head, which I've just been absolutely loving. And I am, look, as frustrated as I am that it won't talk to my tablet, I think it's absolutely great that I can create maps just with a mouse and keyboard. And that does mean for those of us out there those of you out there who don't have a drawing tablet and don't really want to get one just for making maps, it sort of bridges that gap and makes things a lot easier. So we've added transparency. What that means is once I start adding the next layers on top, it's just going to be easier to see what's going on underneath. So let's have a think about where we want to start. Yep. Okay, I'm going to start on the northern coast. Oh, I've also got what appears to be the snap turned on, so we'll turn that off. That means we've got free movement. Okay, now we're just going to start moving along. And I'm not really happy with that, so I'm going to press delete, and it's going to take it back to a different point, which is nice. Yeah, the one downside to using a mouse like this is I will say that your wrists get a little bit tired. But no pain, no gain, as they say. No, we don't like that either. Let's go back. Excellent. I'm going to move the map across a little bit. I guess my question to the Knight Geo, how do we get to the cloud section of the world? How do we travel there? Is it something that you can only do through magical means? Is it something that like there's a certain point on Earth that almost acts like a portal? Because yeah, I've been sort of just thinking quite hard on the on that idea, and I really like it. But how are we gonna implement it in this world that we're creating together? It's a bit jagged. We don't like that. It's a bit silly. Here we go. Better yet, is this cloud section, the cloud island, is that like off limits to most people? Maybe only the Azamar are able to live there. Maybe it's a special place that you can only go if you're invited, and if you're able to make it there yourself. Tell you what, you got me thinking on that there. Ooh. Ooh. So Night Geo. Well, it depends on how the world is designed. We could do something like how Oda does it in One Piece. I will admit, I haven't seen One Piece. So we'll have to look that one up, but that's okay. Where a huge geyser shoots out of the water, or shoots out water, and if you're on a boat that is designed to fly in a way, it can ride the water up, defying gravity to the clouds. Ooh. So we could try and create a natural reason that causes it, or a special portal similar to how we have portals to the different elemental planes. But this one is to the clouds, where a fount of youth exists. And yeah, could have the Azumara reside there. That is really cool. Like maybe there's like some section of the ocean that like is part of like a legend or a myth, and it's sort of nobody really knows all that much about it, but there's somewhere out in the ocean that is rumored, legend has it, kind of thing where there's a portal to the gods is like the legend, but perhaps indeed it is a geyser that shoots water up, and there's only certain times of the year, or maybe it has to be at the whim of the Asimar. Ooh, this could be kind of cool. This could be, yeah, I like that. Definitely like that. So that would definitely have to go on a separate map. But the cool thing about campaign cartographer for a DM, not so much for the players, but the DM, is that we can layer things. So I'm not sure if you guys saw in the when I was creating a new map, you can say how many levels there are. So technically, if you really wanted to, you could have a lower layer. Let's just say that that's like the underworld. And then you've got your middle layer, which would be the world as we know it, and then you could have a third layer, which could be the heavens, and you, the DM, can navigate through those layers. They appear as separate maps, so they're not like layered on top of each other physically, but as far as being saved together as a group, it allows for that. And you can also, let's just say we're going to put a city over here by this weird little cove thing. You could also have a link to that city. So you could technically make yourself a completely interactive map where you can navigate to different sections through your overworld map. So if we were doing this in a smart way, which I hadn't considered a city in the clouds, but if we were going to do this again, we could potentially do 3 layers and map it all out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually finish this layer here, so that way I can copy all of what we've already done into a new map where we can encompass multiple layers. Like I say, perhaps we can have an underworld that we think about a little bit later. And then we can have the mundane plane. And now we've got this cloud city that obviously we're going to have to name together. I struggle a little bit with naming, I'll be honest. I tend to just name things as my screen name suggests. I tend to go for the Latin nomenclature of plants to name things, because people go, "Oh, that's a really cool name," but it's literally just a flower, and I'm just using its botanical name. But yeah, until you get somebody who's slightly plant savvy along, and they go, "Did you just name your city stinkweed? Okay, you're a bit weird." But yes, chat, please help me name this world. Otherwise, I will default to probably my favorite plants, which are the Hoyas. We'll look up their botanical name for their family, and I'd probably end up naming the world that, because Hoyas are really pretty. It's similar to an idea I have cooking, where during the time of Halloween and its festivities at midnight, and only on a blood moon, which happens every 25 years. Well, that's the other question. How many moons are there orbiting this planet? Because that's also important too, because maybe every 25 years, if there's 3 moons, for example, every 25 years, all 3 moons are full, and all of them are blood moons, and this could perhaps be the opening to the portal. Don't know. Like these are all things we have to think about. And again, the beauty of world building is you can be as detailed as you want to be. For myself, I think I quite enjoy potentially going over the top, being incredibly detailed, because then, like I say, no matter what your players choose to do, you kind of have something up your sleeve ready to go. So a perfect example of this is in one of my campaigns, I have this spooky man, all dressed in black. Think Alucard from Housing, but all dressed in black, right? You don't see his face, you just see the orange of the goggles pointing out from under his hat. And he says to the players, "You have to go to the main city. The mayor wants to speak with you. Here's some gold. Go speak with the mayor. And yes, you can take this gold and run, but know that the military of this city-state will hunt you down and they will kill you." Now, every single party has been absolutely terrified of the spooky man with the goggles and have gone to the city. But if they decide, no, you know what, we're going to take the gold and run, and they decide to run south, well, because of the way we're setting up these worlds, we know that the equator is along this center line here, and maybe the city's up here where it's a little bit more temperate. We know as they come through the desert, we're going to start thinking about, okay, well, what plants are going to grow in this area? What critters are going to grow in this area? What's the culture like? So the more you sort of think about your world, it doesn't matter where your players go, because they run into the desert, right? Now they've got to contend with sandworms, or maybe they have to contend with an angry dragon who hangs out there, who's got like a god complex. It doesn't really matter what they run into, as long as you have an idea as to what each continent, and within each continent, what each biome, what each area sort of, what resides there. It makes it feel like it's a living, breathing world, and you don't have to try and railroad your players. You can just let it happen. Because while they're dealing with the sandworm, or the dragon, or perhaps just a really weird dude that hangs out in the desert collecting shoes, it really doesn't matter. But while they're dealing with that, they've also got to contend with the fact that they've got this country's military chasing them down for essentially defecting. And so now the campaign can sort of shift from the story that you had in your head into something completely different. And it's still going to be fun. It's still going to be great for you, and you're still going to be prepared. So world building is perhaps the most important part for a DM. More important than the story you have in your head. More important than any module, any campaign. Because the more prepared you are with your world, the more prepared you are for when inevitably your players decide to do something that you weren't expecting, because they will. They always do. But I'll stop talking and get back to finishing this continent, because otherwise we will be here for 10 years. And I will go back to the Night Geo. So yeah, the blood moon happens every 25 years. The main city, at the main city of one of the continents, a huge structure appears in the skies above, where a castle appears, and is only there until dawn, in which it disappears. I'm like, ooh, that's cool too. That is cool too, because then that's sort of like, I'm trying to think. I think there's like an anime that's kind of got that. Like, is it Laputa, the castle in the sky, that's kind of got something a bit like that? That can definitely be a really cool way to introduce Curse of Strahd. Ooh. I just added a random continent to the map when people weren't looking. I'm like, oh no, it's always been there. But I think that's a way better way. Oh look, there's nothing wrong with running modules. I've got I got Strahd for Christmas from my best friend, who knows how to give gifts. She is prime gift giver, I would say. But she gave me Curse of Strahd. She gave me that big cool box. And I've also got Keys to the Golden Vault and Tales from the Yawning Portal. Actually went camping just this weekend and ran the Merkmire was it Merkmire Stone? I can't remember the name of it. But I managed to sort of fit it into my pre-existing world, just in case the boys decide they actually want to play, something that I've made later on, because it was sort of an introduction to D&D for the fellow we took camping with us. And it was really fun, and it's given me some cool ideas for potential heist quests. And I think they're can be really helpful for just even some side quests for later on in my campaign. Which my campaign is a homebrew, heavily inspired by at the moment Perdido Street Station by China Mayevil. If you guys haven't read that, I recommend it. Oh my goodness, it is such a cool book. The first third is a bit hard to get through, but believe me, keep going. Read it. It is incredible. And yeah, my world is based on the Baslag series. So at the moment, it's mostly Perdido Street Station, but yeah, I would like to do the Scar and Iron Council, but Perdido Street definitely is the most interesting one for me. I don't want to say too much just in case any of my players are watching. Yeah, they think they know what's going on, and then you pull out the rug from underneath them after a year or two and give them a nice big twist. Bit of fun. So got a nice fine point down here. And yes, this whole map making process can be quite time consuming, but it doesn't have to be. You can be a lot less pedantic and just sort of allow things to be random. And you can also just stop talking and just concentrate on what you're doing. So I'm actually going to cut out that section there because I feel like it's a bit too lumpy, making things a bit too. Give another little cove there. And I will pull up Incarnate again and show you perhaps the difference in what you're able to do. Although maybe we'll do that next week because I flipped my drawing tablet around and now I have to reconfigure it, and I'd rather not have you guys be bored to tears with me reconfiguring my Wacom. Wait, Huion. Don't use the Wacom anymore. And there we go. We have ourselves a landmass. We can hide the sketch layer just so you can sort of see what it looks like. So you can see that it's sort of added the coastal areas already. And you've sort of got like this beveling where you've almost got like a beach or a cliff face. I quite like that as far as the landmass goes. Could definitely go more minute details because, as you can see, when we first started, we were doing much smaller gaps, and then we started getting distracted about this point and started talking about cloud cities and how many moons were involved and stuff, which is definitely not a bad thing. We're here for discussion, but you can definitely see how it sort of fills in the details for you. So what we can actually do is we can head to land. And we can play around with that a little bit. So color key, if we were to open that, edit, you'll see pink. So what that means is we come over to our tools over here and I grab the pink. And if I go like this, like just random spaghetti, it looks like a pink blob, right? Bam, we got a lake. So that's pretty cool. It's sort of like telling the program to exclude that area. So that can be pretty cool. So we've got the color key. We've got a bevel. So that's that sort of edge that we see along the side, and we can change all of that. We can also change the global sun direction, so that's going to sort of shift where the shadows fall. And be consistent, because as soon as we start putting down mountains and cities and stuff, we want those shadows to be consistent. So at this point, bevel size is 0.2. We're going to remember that. Might even copy that. What happens if we change it to 1? Apply. 4. Bit of a change, hey? Got quite a drastic clear edge. So we can definitely play around with it's something you can play around with to sort of change up how things look. So, like that actually looks quite cool. It gives that sort of that 3D look to it. And then what happens when you hit map units? Yeah, not much. So what happens if we change it to 5? Again, not much. So the percentage of drawing, look, I'm not going to pretend I know what that means. But you can change it, play around with different things, and so long as you sort of keep track of what it initially was, if you do something and you go, oh no, that's absolutely horrible, you can always just put it back. So we'll keep it default for now. So the glow is sort of that coastal glow that we're seeing around the outside. And this is the sort of colouring around that makes it pop. So again, we can play with that, but for now, what I'm thinking we can do is actually put our sketch layer back up. We're going to copy the whole thing. Oh, we're going to click the correct tool first. All right, so copying in this can be a bit of a pig, but it's all right. I got you guys. So actually everything is selected. 4 entities are picked. 1, 2, 3, plus the land layer that we just did. We're going to select, I believe it's Control C. No, okay, like I say, it's a little bit weird. Control C. All right, we'll just do it like this. 4 entities picked. Do it. Clipboard origin. We are going to go in the middle here. Now that should have worked. Like I say, I don't do this too often, so we'll see how this goes. We're going to go overland maps. We're going to go 13th Age Revisited. 13th Age itself is actually an interesting tabletop RPG. Definitely recommend having a look at that if you have a chance now. That was 5,000 by 3,000. Now, map background. Yep. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. Enable multiple levels. Above ground, we're going to go 1. Below ground, we're going to go 1. We are going to leave add roof drawing blank, and we're going to hit finish. Back over to maps. Ooh, enjoy your lunch. I can smell my my partner's making himself a cheese sandwich. Okay, so it's zoomed all the way in because of course it has. All right, so this is going to be our navigation. Go to floor 1, basement, and that's going to send us to the basement. See? So we can actually navigate. But it hasn't given us that top layer that I was hoping. So let's try that again. Because I've never done this with the world map before. Enable, well, yeah. That's because I was silly. We need 2 above ground. DDA. Yippity. Yep. Loves to zoom in the whole way. There we go. Now we've got floor 1, floor 2, and basement. I believe we can rename those to something a little bit less less boring. But for when it comes time to export the maps for our players, we just hide those, and it will hide it. But for our own navigation purposes, we can do that. Now, yes, amazing. So then we've just pasted it down on top. Excellent. So, no. Okay. That's a bit better. There we go. Lovely. Let's go about there. Beautiful. Now, get rid of that. And we are going to add that transparency for the sketch layer again. And we are right back where we were, except now we have the capabilities of adding some interesting things as far as a world map goes. We've got the idea to do some sort of cloud-based, I don't know if it's going to be a city, whether it's going to be a world unto itself, but we can essentially start playing with those concepts. We shall stick with the mundane plane for now, but we've definitely set ourselves up for something really interesting. So, let us move on to... No, we don't want the grid overlay for right now. Let us move on to... I think we'll just stick with default land for now, because then we can always change things as we go. Kind of like how this is stretched out, but I might actually extend it out a little bit more around here, or perhaps we'll actually make that sort of a bit more of like a sea ice type thing. So maybe in summer it expands. Oh, sorry. In winter it expands out a little bit more. But for now we'll continue with what we've got. So, and you'll notice that it wants to snap to just underneath this border. That's because this is no longer a sketch layer. This is actually the land layer. So the program wants it to look good underneath that border. You'll see in a moment. As we kind of don't like that weird beak looking shape. I think we'll just sort of follow the shape that we set out already. Yeah, that's a bit better. And I don't remember if I've mentioned this yet or not, but the idea is going to be everything that we do create in this series, from maps to NPCs to stat blocks to, I don't know, maybe even this the potential of the world anvil or a website. Everything that we create will be available to subscribers for Dungeons and Dragons Australia, and any members for the YouTube channel. We'll get you the appropriate role maybe in the Discord. Look, I don't know how the tech side of things work. That's what my unseen servants are for. But yeah, I think it would be nice to encourage a bit of growth for the awesome people that run DDA. And yeah, we'll make everything that we have created available to subs of the channel. There we go. Look at that. And go for this one. One last little, oh, yeah. And like I say, we can be as pedantic as we want, but you get the idea. Oops, sorry, hand got a little bit crampy there. Excellent. As you can see, we're starting to speed things up a little bit here. I'm just being a little bit random with how we're clicking around. And we're just about there. Molto bene. Lovely. So now we're going to hide our sketch layer so we can appreciate our world in its full beauty. Beautiful. Now, one could argue that if we're wanting to have this strange portal in the center of the ocean, that our continents are perhaps a little bit too close together. Definitely. And if we perhaps made this landmass here and this landmass here a little bit smaller, we could potentially even have a southern ice cap. Could keep those a little bit further apart. But we're going to remember that this is a sphere we're talking about, and we're trying to map it out on a square. So the distances that we're seeing here aren't necessarily true to form. But regardless, I would still like to alter this landmass. We're going to make him a little bit smaller. And we're going to put him up a bit more. Yeah, we'll leave him there. We are going to move from the center. We're going to make that. Perhaps we can bring this one across a little bit more. And then that means we've got sort of an unknown section of map over here. Well, actually, that looks like it sort of fits, doesn't it? Yeah. So we've got this sort of thing happening. We can have some islands, perhaps, along here. And then we've got this section of ocean that perhaps the inhabitants of this world have some legends regarding portals to the heavens. Perhaps at the wrong time of year, or the right time of year, depending on who you talk to, this portal may perhaps, instead of taking you to the heavens, takes you elsewhere. But for now, I think that's a pretty good starting point as far as land masses go. So we kind of want to make this one our sort of Arctic Circle, if you will. So what we're going to do is change the coloring, the properties. So what we're going to do is click on this little paint icon here, change properties. We're going to click on that. D for do it. Again, doesn't seem like it makes much sense, but it really doesn't matter. And we are going to change it to Hills Grey 2. Doesn't really matter because we're going to come back up to this FS Solid bitmap. I'm going to hit Hills Grey 2, find, and I think it's going to just be easier if I bring up that sticky notes again and just leave it open because it is in a bit of a strange spot to get to. CC3, bitmaps, tiles, overland. Okay, so the difference between Hills Grey 1 and Hills Grey 2, it seems like there's a little bit more dirt involved with this one. So I actually kind of like, I think I like Hills Grey 2 for this. And we can actually, we can go outside of the style if we wanted to just, you know, we don't have to be stuck in this 13th age revisited. We could go to Spectrum, for example, and have a look at what they've got on offer as far as bitmap styles go. I quite liked the Darkland style for cities. Overlands, I mean, you know, that's actually kind of cool. But yeah, look, I quite like this 13th age style. And let's have a look what it looks like. Oh, yeah, that's nice. I quite like that. So the other thing we're now going to do is go over the top of it with Icefield. Yes. Go over the top of the Icefield. And this may be where we stray from the overland style that we've selected, because I just saw a really nice looking snow style in the Darklands. So we'll have a look. Okay, so it's loosey-goosey. Rightio. So we can sort of see that there's a bit of gap. Well, maybe instead of just having this strange blanket, maybe we can try that again, but make it a little bit more, I don't know, like how about if we go here, come out, we're going to press T for trace, we're going to select, oh, actually we need to come in a little bit more. Delete, 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 delete. Start again. So we're going to go T for trace once we collect our ice field again. First point can be, has the snap turned back on again? Yes, it has. Very annoying. We can sort of get into this section. First point, T. Right, it's going to want to go that way. Of course it is. Now, this can be a bit of fun sometimes. And because we're doing quite a large map, it can be a little bit unhappy. It's wanting to go that way. Okay. So we'll try that again. T for trace. Here. Starting point. Okay, still wants to go that way. Come on, behave yourself, please. Starting point is here. There we go. We're going the right way now. Beautiful. So we can have the ice go right up along here, and then we're going to make it cut inland around here. Just to give you an idea that, like, we can actually go over the top of things that we already have. And perhaps we can sort of play around with this a little bit more next week. Then we're going to try and cut back in here again. Actually, no. It's going to be slightly warmer down there. So keep that as is, but we will cut in at this section. T for trace, select entity, starting point of portion, and it's going to be a pig. Excellent, we love that. That's fine. We'll just be cheeky and come along here. We'll try again. There we go. Happy as anything. Yeah. Scroll out. So we're going to trace along here. and up. There we go. And up. From here, we've got ourselves a nice straight line. Lovely. So now we've got a bit of a different overlay. So there's our Arctic Circle. Again, we'll think of some cool names. Some cool names to give our land masses, but we'll just refer to it by a real world metric, so that way we know what we're talking about. Okay, so at this point, there's a couple of things that we can do. We can either start thinking about islands. We can hone in on one, maybe, yeah, probably be just the one landmass, and really start to get nice and involved in what is going to be in that landmass. Or we can sort of play around with what we've currently got already. What I'm thinking is I wouldn't mind fleshing out some islands through here. Perhaps some sort of ice flows coming along through here. And maybe another island chain that sort of follows this continent around. And we'll see where we're at that point. Because I don't really want to start going into continental mapping until perhaps next week. So that way we've got a full session on that, because that's going to be a lot more time consuming. That's going to be a multi-parter. Because we've got to think about where we're going to put mountains and rivers, because those two things are just intrinsically intertwined. And then obviously we're going to have to think about where our dry zones are, where our tropical zones are. So for now, let's just focus on the world building, and we'll come back to that. Now for the more Arctic islands, I think we'll just cut out the middleman. We won't do the basic the default land. We'll actually start with the hills. I'm just going to draw out a couple of little islands. So with our islands, we can be a little bit more loosey-goosey with these guys. So I'll get to about here and I'll just right-click and it finishes it off for me. Oop. So it makes it a little bit more of a random shape. They look a little bit strange right now, but as soon as I hit the refresh button, as you see, it'll sort of have these islands. Apparently, edge fade. No, we don't want that. In this case, we kind of actually want them to do the same thing. So we're going to do a little bit of cheeky beaky here, because I see what it's trying to do. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to swap layers. So this yellow explodey box thing, we're actually going to go move to sheet. We're going to select all of the things we just drew. D for do it. Add it to the land. So you'll see the tick box there. Okay. And now it's mimicking. It's been moved to the land section. So what this does mean as well is, let's just say we've done some cool stuff, right? So we've added the ice to that island. We can hide it to see, just to to keep that section visible. We can hide everything except for the layer that we're on, and as we continue to build, we will be hiding layers. I can guarantee you, we will be putting things on the wrong sheet, and we're going to have to struggle to put them onto other sheets, because that's just, as you get better at the program, you'll stop doing it, but I'll forget that I get too excited and I start throwing forests down and forget that I've made a separate sheet for the maybe the rainforest than I have for the temperate forest. So just keep track of your sheets. Don't do what I say, not what I do. Because it does get a bit frustrating when you've done like 90% of a forest and then you're like, oh my god, I've put them on the temperate forest layer. Oh no. And then you got to try and grab them all. And so just keep in mind that you've got these different layers, same as Photoshop. I do it in Photoshop too when I'm drawing, or in Rebel, sorry. I'll be like, yeah, I've got this layer for the line work. And then I'll start coloring things in or doing something that's meant to be on a different layer. Finish 90% of the picture and realize I've got it on completely the wrong layer and have to start again. So yeah, remember your layers. Remember your sheets, because it is really, really annoying when you ruin your own day. It's not the program's fault, it is my fault. So yeah, keep that in mind as we continue. But I think maybe a couple of teeny tiny little islands through this section that we've just done might be nice. Just to sort of fill things out a little bit. Maybe give him just a tiny little guy out here. And of course, we're going to move them to the sheet. Now, there is a way to sort of manually add things to the sheets. So to turn it off automatically, wanting to place it onto the, in this case, the hills layer. I recommend not doing that, because then it just makes things even worse, because then you'll just be putting things on layers that you shouldn't be. If you're good at not doing that, then sure, go for it. But I'm not going to turn that feature on, because I know that I'm just going to make a hot mess of it. So those are pretty cool little islands just up there, and you can sort of see that it's starting to feel a little bit more like a world. Maybe we'll put couple more little icy islands down here. But what I'd like to do is get the landmass islands of this continent out first. So we'll do that, and we'll see how that goes. Bit of a New Zealand type situation up here. Yeah, no, we can do a better job than that. I don't like those last two. Just don't like any of those. Those three are cool. That's fine. But I don't like those other ones that we just did. So how about we do not quite. I think that looks good. Yeah, yeah, that's a bit nicer. And then maybe he can have a little one up here. And this guy can do more like that. We'll zoom in because we'll do a teeny tiny little island. Teeny tiny. There we go. Now we can add as many or as few islands as we want. But I think that's looking pretty nice. Not too crowded, not too cluttered, but starting to look a bit more fractal, a bit more broken up. So let's zoom out. And apologies for the continual scratching of the nose. Got a bit of hay fever. The weather hasn't been particularly great. But let's have a look. I think as far as these three, the sort of interaction points between these three land masses, I think we might like to let's add some more stuff going along through here. Yeah, I think so. Unless anybody's got any other ideas. Should we leave that blank? Should we chuck in some more islands? What are our thoughts? Because there's definitely a few things that we can add in. All right. Actually, let's do a zoom out because we've got. So that's sort of like where that horizontal line is. That's sort of where we're thinking our equator is. So we could definitely do like a cool big sort of mini continent type thing through here. Oh, we don't like that. That's a bit of a weird. Don't like that shape. It's a bit nicer. Kind of looks like a chicken leg. No, we don't like that. We don't want chicken leg island. Or maybe we do want chicken leg island. I don't know. I'm not a fan. I do not want chicken leg island. It just sort of looks like a sad piece of toast. All right, let's have a look. We'll zoom that out. No, we don't like it. That's trash. That's hot trash. We'll try again. This is like I say, it's subjective. You can definitely be as picky as you want to be. But I definitely like the idea of having an island sort of in this section here where I don't know, depending on how many islands we put in here, I suppose it makes it whether it's a sea or an ocean, but we can get into the differences between seas and oceans another time. But for now, let's try and get our island down pat. Still not enthusiastic about that shape. Okay, what if well, that's basically just like a weird lumpy version of Australia, but you know what? We're going to leave it, and Tasmania can go over here. There we go. And that's where the drow live. Yep, no, that's actually not bad. I like this shape. It is a good shape. It is a strong shape. And in the center, there can be a desert where scary things live. Yep, that's perfect. Amazing. Okay. When you accidentally create Australia on your on your fantasy world. Oh dear. There we go. Look at that. A couple of little extra islands, so that way we're just not making it too obvious that it's Australia. All right, there we go. Lovely. And I feel like another little something through here could be good. Basically another Australia, no worries. Bit of a formless, lumpy version. Oh, I don't like that. Too close. Lovely. Okay. We could potentially do some more down there, but I think we don't want too much, because the more we make, the more we have to think about what lives on those sections. We already know that drow hang out in Australia. They're, they live down under, so that's where they can hang out. But yeah, the more things that we make, the more we have to think about who lives where. So I think in that section, I think we are pretty good. Maybe we can add a couple more little like snowy sections here, but anything else from there. And remember, this is the overworld map. So when we start thinking about continents, we're going to be zooming in on just this section here. So there's no reason why we can't have some extra little islands off the coast that don't necessarily show up on the overview on the overworld map. We just want sort of the major points of interest on the overworld map. Because when it does come time to mapping out our continents, to sort of say, hey, this is what lives on this continent and stuff. Because yeah, we're definitely going to be doing mountains and rivers and lakes and things like that, but a more detailed continental map. We'll be copying the shape and any surrounding little bits, and we'll be putting them on their own separate map so we can really go into detail. But for now, like I say, we just put the most important things down. So I'm thinking a couple of little guys down here. They're not going to show up for now, that's fine. Maybe another one here. Move to sheet. 1, 2, 3. D for do it. Land. Refresh. Maybe one more. Because we can also be a bit cheeky and say that, like, instead of saying this is Moth Island and this is Butterfly Island, we can just say that these are the Moth Islands and these are the Butterfly Islands. Just give them a encompassing name. We don't have to name every single individual one. We can be a little bit cheeky, depending on how much work you want to do, I suppose. But yeah, let's have a zoomy. I suppose the cool thing about this sort of semi-transparent section is we can do some sandbars when we're doing our continental maps. Yeah, well, if you click that button and don't just you don't right click it, then yeah, it's just going to open up that sheet box that we saw earlier. So we don't want to do that. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picked. D for do it. Go to land. Lovely. Now, sometimes what it will do is you'll do something and then it'll revert to this, and you don't get any of those cool effects. Yeah, we don't freak out. It's just sometimes unchecked that box for us. We just do that. It's opening up our sheet effects, activate sheet effects, all good. Now, if we've made a really, really, really big map, in this case we have, let's just say that your computer isn't processing quite fast enough. So if you remember when we were trying to trace around this island, that it was a little bit stuttery, that it was a little bit unhappy. We have made a map that is essentially, as far as it's concerned, 5 kilometers wide by 3 kilometers tall. That's not how big it prints out, obviously, but you're using quite a lot of processing power to make these maps. So if you're finding that things are a little bit slow, you turn off your sheet effects, because that's just adding more processing power and turning them back on to check on things as you need to. Now, I've got a bit of a beefcake of a computer, so I don't usually do that, but there may be times that we'll need to do it, considering that we've got the 3 floors happening. Okay, so I think that little section through here is actually quite nice. We might do a couple of little, like, bigger sized ones along through here, but again, we don't want it too cluttered. So we'll put it in, see what it looks like, and if we think that it maybe is a little bit too cluttered, we'll just get rid of them. So I think perhaps having some sort of long, skinny, I like pointies. Again, we're all a little bit different, so if you don't like the sort of pointy island, don't like that shape, but maybe it actually is a good. Have a look, see. Kind of looks a bit cluttered, doesn't it? Okay. How's about that? Nah. We'll leave that space blank for now. Maybe there's something cool that hangs out in that ocean. But we'll leave him blank for now. We can always add some more islands if you guys reckon that we need to fill out that gap a little bit more. But I'm thinking that this interior section here is potentially filled out enough. We can always come back to it, but I think it's filled out enough. We've got some seas coming through here. We could also argue that this whole section here is a sea rather than an ocean. But again, it depends on whether we sort of close off these heads or not. Again, we'll just take a moment to sort of look at what we've got on the canvas and think about what we can add. Okay, well, if we were to close off the heads between these 2 continents, like, for example, let's grab my sketchy pen. If we were to sort of put in some islands that sort of, closed off this section here, and okay, I see. Not too sure what happened there. But yeah, if we closed off something through here and through here, you could argue that this section through here is now 1C. And if we closed this off a little bit more, getting used to the spaghetti drawing. If we close this section off a little bit more, we could argue that this section through here is another C, which is different from an ocean because they're sort of more enclosed by the land masses. So that could be kind of cool. Perhaps this can be like a frozen sea. So in the summer months, it looks like this, but in winter, it sort of closes over a little bit more and turns these two continents into a supercontinent. Don't know. A little bit to think about. But I do like differentiating on a map where your seas and your oceans, you know, separate from each other. So let's close these off a little bit more and get those two seas happening. And the naming of things becomes a little bit easier once we start putting some landmarks down. So maybe, for example, in this little section here, if we were to close that off and these were all volcanoes, we could say that this is like, you know, the Firewater Sea or something cool like that. So we can definitely name things based on the landmarks that we put down. So we won't worry about names for today. This is just called DDA, Dungeons and Dragons Australia. We'll think of some cool names for our world as well as various continents when the time comes. But for now, we are simply being creative. We are simply just... no, we don't like that. Simply just playing. And we will do our hills again. Beautiful. Okay, we'll do another one of those sort of long sausage islands. And that's going to want to go on the, sort of semi-invisible layer. So we're just going to grab them all. And we are going to put them on the land layer, or sheet. We're not going to play with layers at all. Layers are a thing that we just don't want to deal with. This is where the layers are. Not even going to. That is not... Nope. Maybe if you get the program, you guys can play around with that and let me know how you go. But no, for me personally, I just don't touch the layers. The developers say don't touch the layers. You're just going to make a big old mess of things, and I'm more than happy to heed their advice. But if anybody gets campaign cartographer and they do play around with the layers, let me know how you go. And if everything goes a little bit poo shaped, don't you know? I don't want to say that I told you so, but I told you so. What do we think of that? Yeah. I don't like that very much. But we will still put a couple of little islands through here, just to fill it out a little bit more. What do you think of that? What? Oh. We don't want to play with symbols just yet. That's That's the thing for next week. But no, don't like that. Let's go. Oh, we've got another chicken leg island. We're just going to roll with it. Chicken leg island is totally fine. Okay. And we'll close this one off a little bit more, again, to sort of differentiate those two C's from each other. And when you're making your own maps, do not be afraid to get some inspiration from other people. Have a look at what other people are doing with their maps. Have a look at our world and see how different things are formed, how different land masses are put together, the different names for things, how seas are different from oceans, how rivers wind from the mountains and finish off into the sea. Definitely have a look at real world for some inspiration, because yes, we are building a fantasy world, and yes, magic has effect on the landscapes, but that's no reason to not follow the natural order of things, because I can guarantee your maps look so much better when you've got the rivers coming from your mountains, not the other way around. Things look right. And yeah, definitely you can have some weird areas where the magic is so strong that perhaps the rivers run uphill, but if your whole world is just broken rules, then there's nothing really special about certain areas. Like perhaps you wander into a forest that is so warped by magic that the rivers indeed do run uphill, and instead of beginning their journeys at the top of the mountains, they begin at the coast and weave their way, cutting their way up. Perhaps this then means that instead of rain falling, rain raises from the forest. Perhaps, you can play with that. That makes that forest, that space special. But if the whole world is like that, it kind of loses its impact a little bit. So, I mean, again, this is personal preference. Everybody's got their own thoughts and feelings on the matter, but I definitely think that looking at some real world maps, seeing how oceans and rivers and seas and mountains and forests and deserts all interact and where they exist in comparison to one another is really important to building a map that when you zoom out and you look at it from this kind of view, looks like it's realistic, looks like a really well built and thought out map. And you don't have to, like I say, definitely make some exceptions. Maybe there's a rainforest in the middle of the desert, but why? Why does that exist? And then you've got that story behind it, and then there's that exploration side of things. But yeah, I try to keep things on the side of realism, simply because it does make the creation of maps a little bit easier on yourself as well. Because you know that where there's mountains, there's going to be rivers coming on one side, and you can sort of think about where things are going to flow, and from there you've got your rivers. You can generally assume that your settlements are going to be built along rivers beside coastlines. You can sort of plan out where things are. But that being said, if you want to build a world that's completely just warped by magic and there's deserts next to the swamps, then go nuts. I'm not here to tell you not here to tell you how to peel a banana. I'm just offering my my 2 cents on the procedure, which for the record, if you peel a banana from the bottom rather than using the handle, you have A, an easier peel, and B, you've got a little handle to hold on to your banana. So yes, I am here to tell you how to peel a banana. Alrighty. I think that's a little bit better. Yeah, we've got a couple of little islands through there. That's nice. Maybe we'll just chuck a little guy through here to sort of separate out the heads. Give him a friend. There we go. Molto bene. Lovely. I think that's looking quite nice. Might chuck a couple more of the rock islands through here. And then we might have to start thinking about a bit of a debrief. Talk about what we're going to be doing next week. And yeah, just reiterate some of the points just in case any of you guys maybe missed when I started the stream. Ugh. Yeah, move the sheet. D for do it. Okay. Amazing. Let's have a look. See. Let's have a look. Did it again. We right click on it. I think the other one was over there. Yep. Lovely. Add a couple more of these teeny tiny little islands and then we'll call it a day and have a little chat. There we go. Beautiful. Right click, move to sheet. Very cool. Amazing. Lovely. In fact, I think this little fella here can maybe not be a thing. Let's have a look. There we go. That looks a bit nicer. Look at that. All right. So we've got ourselves a bit of a plan happening. We've got 3 major land masses, one of which is sort of the world's equivalent of the Arctic or Antarctic, depending on who you talk to. We've got 2 major continents, which most likely are going to be controlled by very different cultures. We'll have our own countries within those continents as well. But generally speaking, these 2 continents are going to be vying for power. We've sort of pushed everything off to the side. One of these lands are cooler than the others. Oh, I'm going to assume that you're referring to the desert island that we have planned for over here. But yes, we do have everything sort of pushed off to the side because of this suggestion that the Knight Geo made of perhaps there is a sort of heavenly realm, less of a heavenly realm and more of he's thinking sort of a cloud city, and I'm sort of taking this and running with it a little bit. And due to that sort of thought process, we've actually created a map that has 3, oh yes, we definitely want to save changes, that has 3 layers to it. So as a DM, we can navigate between our world map, the cloud realm, and I just sort of figured, following on from a mundane realm, a heavenly realm, we've also got the potential for an underworld type situation. So yeah, we've got the 3 levels. We've got this big open space in the ocean, which can leave us open for perhaps there is an undiscovered continent over there, or perhaps this is in the center of this ocean where perhaps a portal can open to take us to one of these 2 ethereal or underworld realms. Perhaps it's when the moons align, and again, we haven't decided on how many moons or any other celestial bodies there are, but this little space over here leaves things open to play around with, to teleport between our various levels. We've got a bit of space down the bottom here that we can definitely fill with more islands. But as far as what we've managed to do this week, we have managed to get a pretty good understanding of some continents, and I'm already starting to think, oh, okay, well, perhaps there can be some sort of, maybe the elementals live up in the like the Genasi, for example, or Ganassi. I'm not really too sure how people pronounce it. I say Genasi. Perhaps they can live up in the Arctic sort of themed area, because I mean they're elementals. They'll be able to sort of create their own environments that they prefer. Maybe the elves can sort of hang out in this sort of warmer section down here with the drow obviously hanging out on that sort of Australia-shaped island, because as we know, Australia is indeed the Underdark. I jest. But yeah, we can start to play with where all of our classic D&D races are going to be living in these 3 sections. So, what are we going to do next week? Well, we can either, we'll sort of decide what we'll do based on what the chat wants to do. If there's not really a proper consensus, we can continue filling out this world map. Or we can sort of go, you know what, let's start playing with a continent. Let's start putting down some mountains. Let's start thinking about how we want to build this world out, because let's be honest, the most exciting part is drawing in those rivers and where all the towns and stuff are going to be. So we'll see how we go. I'm thinking that maybe it could be a good idea to start doing a continent next week. But no pressure. We'll just see how the week takes us and what people are wanting to do. Or maybe we can think about the about this cloud realm that the Night Geo suggested, because I really like that idea. And you know what? This isn't my world. This is our world. And the more input that you guys give, the more that we can create something really cool together. And this is a really good point to reiterate that, yeah, subscribers and members, subscribers to the Twitch channel and members of the YouTube channel will gain access to all of the maps, the NPCs, the stat blocks, like literally every little thing that we're going to be doing across the time that we have together here. You'll have access to all of those to use in your own campaigns. And for those who aren't subscribing, that's totally fine, because guess what? You can put everything that we've talked about into practice, either utilizing Campaign Cartographer 3, 3+, sorry. Perhaps you've got access to something like Rebel. Perhaps you prefer Photoshop or GIMP. Doesn't really matter. You can definitely sort yourself out with some cool brushes and stencils to do exactly what we've just been talking about. It really doesn't matter what program you use. All that matters is your imagination and how you want to build your world. And yes, thank you, chat. My unseen servant in the chat. Let's not forget that if you aren't already, please become a member of our community at facebook.com/groups/D&D Australia, D&D Ost, or just search Dungeons and Dragons Australia in the search bar, and also join us over on Discord for some more fun. Let's just say you're looking for a group, we can help you out with that. Just come and be a member with us over at D&D Australia. But yeah, that all said, it's been a pleasure doing this, and as we go, we're just going to get better and better because I'm really not tech savvy. I've got some unseen servants doing all the hard stuff for me. Yes, Shelley DM Gaming has been doing all the behind the scenes work for me today because I'm not very tech savvy. But please join us again next week. It's going to be about the same time. I'm thinking 12 till about 2 each Friday, unless I have an exam or, some horrible assignment due that weekend. But yeah, join us over at Facebook. Join us over at our Discord. Links have been dropped by my unseen servants in the chat. And it's been a pleasure working with you. Next week, we'll be continuing our lovely world map. And I may even show you some hand-drawn methods as well once I've reconfigured the tablet. Cool. And as soon as I see CC3 back up on Humble Bundle for a reasonable price, you better know, Drop Bears, that I'll be sharing that link with you because this program is great, but it's even better when it's cheap. So have yourselves a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you next week, or better yet, we'll see you over on our Discord or Facebook. So bye for now, and see you next week. Oh, and please join us on Facebook and Discord. What a perfect place to ask any questions you might have.